but it was never like a casual, let's get into a conversation. No.
Yeah, because you're a label guy, John. He'll give you the fish handshake. I can't hear John now, so I don't know.
John's all
frozen up, and right. So we're getting to the witching hour here.
Yeah, did I get my? Okay, I didn't finish my. Did you get my Billy Pilgrim story? You should
no, go ahead and say that.
Fine, it's fine.
We'll save it for the next round.
No, it's just the actor lives around here, and I would run into him a lot. But anyway,
get him on the show.
You also run into
get him on the show.
You also run into Gibby now and then.
I haven't seen. No, I still no. I haven't seen Gibby in a couple months. Like I haven't seen him. He must have gotten out of town for the pandemic. But Gibby, like literally, is on my same street, like 4 blocks that way. And
Gibby Haynes.
Gibby Haynes. See him. Like the funny story is, so Gibby used to live across the street from me, and I used to think it was this guy had these 2 Westies, these little white Westie terriers, and I would be like, it's so funny, that guy across the street looks just like Gibby Hayes. I wonder if he even knows who it is. And then later I'm talking to a neighbor, and she's going, it's like, have you ever talked to Gibby? He's such a nice guy. I'm like, no way. It is Gibby Hayes.
Biggest guy, littlest dog.
Yesterday at my son's mountain biking practice, and we were just talking about, like, it came up about there's a place in Oakland, New Jersey. There's 2 places, and they're very close to each other. There was a place called Muller's, and there was a place called Pleasureland. And both of them were like day camps that you could, like, I think it wasn't a club. It was a day camp that you paid a fee and you went in, and they had a polio pond that you could swim in and all that kind of good stuff. And we were yip-yapping about that. And then I mentioned Suntan Lake, and this guy who's out there, like, literally loading his bike up onto his rack is just like, because I was like, well, who saw a show at Suntan Lake up on Route 23? And it's just like, he goes, and it was like, and he goes, I saw a show there. And I was like, oh man, who was it? Was it like, some sort of Outlaws incarnation, or like Marshall Tucker? Because like I can remember those bands playing there. And he goes, no, it was the Butthole Surfers and
Stone Temple Pilots, and the Flaming Lips opened up.
He said the Flaming Lips too.
Yeah, they opened up.
Like,
yeah. Yep.
At Suntan Lake on Route 23 in Portland.
So within a
that was Stone Temple Pilots. They were trying to go for credibility. Like they're like, we could go and play the Garden, but we're going to do this instead. And they played these weird locations. It was kind of like they were fighting hard. Yeah,
that's funny. That's why Chris hates.
That's why Chris hates them. Yeah. What I was going to say, within a span of like a couple of years, I saw a show up at Suntan Lake that was exactly what you described. It was a redneck roundup where it was Kansas and who's the guy with the flute? Marshall Tucker band. No, Marshall Tucker band. You got to think Southern rock. And it was like 3 bands. It was like
not that song below this conversation.
No, I won't. I'll spare us, even though I have it on a 70s compilation. But you couldn't. You would have thought you were in the middle of Pennsylvania, and then a year or so later, Kentucky. Yep, and a year or 2 later, I saw the show we just mentioned at Suntan Lake, and I got to tell you, once I moved, I've been out here for 15 years, and I was talking to a friend of our, my son's parents, this guy, and he grew up in the Kinnelon in that area, and I said, whatever happened to Suntan Lake? Wasn't that around here? And he's like, oh yeah, I still live over there. That's where the Target and the Home Depot is now.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
There's a hiking trail now that I go to that follows along 287, and you get to the top of that peak there and look down, and you see, what used to be Suntan Lake.
Wow.
But to add to that,
you could buy Stone Temple Pilots.
Is there still like a wetlands area down there?
Hold on, I want to say to add to that story was I snuck into that show because you could walk through the woods and get into Suntan Lake to see it.
And so you saw the Buttholes show.
Yep. Oh yeah. Because at the time I was a huge Butthole Surfers fan. I was for years, and it was like, oh, I'm definitely going to see that show. And then, I'm sure, Chris, you were the same way. The cynical thing of like Stone Temple Pilots, they're not. How are they possibly headlining? And they would switch off, I think, is what they did.
So Tony, when we finally get out of this quarantine, we would like. And Gibby's back in the neighborhood, we could go hang out at the San Pedro bar, and I'm sure Gibby will more than have. Like, it literally,
we got to get a live. Yeah.
There's a lot of beer drinking in front of bars here in Red Hook, and so many times I've just fallen over laughing because I've been watching a live action King of the Hill of Gibby standing outside drinking beer.
Oh my God! Yeah. You got to get him on the show.
That's so great. I'll mention too, just to bring it back around to the Beatles in completely a background way that you're just mentioning arbitrary. Like I was playing bass in like a band that plays with my son. It's the dad's band. The dad, like this. It's for school. It's for whatever. It's for a good cause kind of thing. And it was like, all right, like I've played bass and guitar in the band, depending on what year it was, and this and that. And one year we had a bass player, this guy Joe, and we ended up talking. We're musicians, so we all talk about music and whatnot. And he was a Beatle fan, and he mentioned that he had taken lessons from the bass player in The Elephant's Memory, and he just said, and I was like, what? And like I was like, no kidding. Like, did you ask him about like what it was like being on the Mike Douglas show and like doing that show with Chuck Berry? And he was like, like he's just like, I don't know enough about that stuff and this and that. And he goes, but the thing is, if you'll pay him, like, you don't have to take bass lessons from him. You can just sit there
pay him for a lesson and hear some stories.
You just sit there and ask him about what it was like to play with John Lennon, on the sometime New York City record.
Chris, could you just really briefly explain the name of that band that you just mentioned?
So The Elephant's Memory was a band that...
a house band?
They were a New York City, like, boogie band that John Lennon picked up. I don't know where. Do you know that story, John? Like, where did John Lennon pick up the Elephant's Memory band? Were they just in East Village?
Someone gave him a cassette. It was like Bob Gruen or someone like that. Like passed him a cassette because he was.
Bob Gruen, Tony took the famous on the top of the rooftop, like with John Lennon with the New York City T-shirt on that everybody knows,
right? And he I want to say it's him. I'm pretty, but gave him. He's like, oh, you should check out these. You might be interested. And this is when they were still living in the Village before the Dakota days and whatever. And he's like, yeah, I like. And so John Lennon came down to a rehearsal, and the story goes that the band was playing loud and the door was locked, and John hung around for 45 minutes banging on the door before they finally let him in.
That's great.
And then he jammed with them. He liked it, and they ended up doing the 1-to-1 concert. Which you
saw them play
first show. Yeah,
you saw The Elephant's Memory, right?
So here we go. We got back to the Beatles. That's the John Lennon is most punk.
Nice. All right. Well, let's wind it up there because once again we're into extra innings, and we gotta.
I don't know. We gotta. Tony, can we keep going? Otherwise we're not gonna. We could turn this into 2 episodes. And
I don't know. It never happens that way.
Right.
I know. It never does.
Yeah.
Tony should say that we're taking a.
We're gonna take a little break because it's Easter, and and baseball is starting up this Thursday. And there's a lot going on, so
pay the bills.
We got to pay the bills, and we got to take a little break, and so this will wind up our 14th episode. We got a good run here, but we'll be back before you know it. But anyway, it's springtime. Get out and take a hike or a walk and listen to our podcast. You've got plenty of stuff to listen to. And this episode, we were all over the place as usual, which is great.
Couldn't be farther from Hamburg.
No, but we made it back to the Beatles, and you heard a lot about our music collection and our record collecting. And John, thank you for indulging me in the SST stuff. I've been
anytime. I'm glad when someone plays me.
I put a lot of money into that label, and unfortunately, from what I just found out, it didn't get to the artist. But
one little credibility I want to take. I wrote the captions in the catalogs that got stuck in the records. So
nice.
When you find an SST, I want to say somewhere around record 50 or 60.
Yeah,
150. That's my bullshit in the catalog.
That's awesome because I spent many a times listening to an SST record, thumbing through that catalog and circling.
That was a cool thing about it.
Circling records that I was going to buy.
Bonus.
And again, that whole thing goes back to the 80s of how in Thrasher magazine we were ordering stuff from the back of the magazine to get our equipment and get our records, and SST was the same thing, mail ordering your records because you couldn't get them in stores. So it was nice to talk about that, and I think and to learn more about the other end of it, and I foresee us, in future episodes delving more into that indie scene. But we should wrap it up. I'm going to mention that this is The Beatdown, and it's available on Apple, Google, CastBox, and Stitcher. Subscribe to us and know when a new episode is available. And please, if you're listening on any of those 4 apps, write a review, preferably a good one. You got to help us get up there because we're stuck at the 237 mark with Apple. And remember, when you're looking for the podcast, it's The Beat Space Down. So it's, and then, you might want to put in there as a subtext, music commentary, and we'll pop right up from there. So it's the Beatdown Music Podcast. Thanks as always to people who are listening that I've spoken to and the past week. Hope everybody's doing well. I want to thank my friends John and Chris, and enjoy your time off.
Henry Rollins turned 60 years old just a couple of weeks ago, too.
Smokes.
And that hurt, I have to admit, just a little bit. I was like, 60? What? Anyway.
We'll pick it up for part 2 next week with the continuing about our stories. So again, thanks everybody for listening, and thanks for your input.
Thanks for hosting, Tony.
Yeah, no problem. I'm enjoying it, and I got to tell you, I love listening to the show when I'm out there in the woods, hiking, or even in my neighborhood, walking around. And please, if anybody wants stickers, where do we get them? How do you get them? The Beatdown. Yeah, The Beatdown. Send us an email to the beatdownmusicpodcast@gmail.com, or like us on Facebook. Thanks again for listening.
Free
guys.
swag.
Free swag. We'll leave it at that.
Real names be proved. Me and Mike Watt, we played for years. Punk rock changed our lives. We learned punk rock in Hollywood. Drove up from Pedro. We were fucking corn dogs. We'd go drink and pogo. Mr. Narrator, this is Bob Dylan to me. My story could be his songs. I'm his soldier child. Our band is scientist rock. But I was E. Bloom and Richard Hell, Joe Strummer and John Doe. Me and Mike Watt playing the guitar.